I'm Ian Hinchke and welcome to Stateline. We'll have those stories in a moment, but first to teenagers in trouble. The federal government has just released a new report into youth violence which shows it's on the rise across Australia. The report also speaks of ways of cutting violence amongst the young. In Adelaide's southern suburbs, Nat Cook and her husband Neil Davis have already made a start. Their only son, 17-year-old Sam Davis, died in 2008 after being punched during a fight at a party. They've set up the Sammy D Foundation, and along with star names like the Power's Dean Brogan and the players from the Adelaide Thunderbirds, they're telling young people about the terrible costs of violence.
In this classroom, the teachers are parents and the students are mothers or mums-to-be. The young mums have come back to class hoping to improve their lives by getting their secondary school certificates. Neil Davis and Nat Cook hope to save lives by telling the young mums about the appalling costs of youth violence.
One punch, side of Sam's head, just here, and within 10 seconds he was on the floor, he'd had a fit and he wasn't breathing.
They do that by sharing the worst day of their lives, the day their 17-year-old son, Sam Davis, died.
Sam went to a party. Sam celebrated a great day at football. He was with many close friends. There were lots of young people at that party. There was people drinking, lots of people under the influence heavily towards the end of the night. There were arguments that happened in the backyard of the party. There was a lack of supervision because there was a lot of trust placed on the young people. We don't blame anybody for any of those circumstances. It could have happened in any backyard in Australia. These arguments then were highlighted, the party was stopped. All these people came out the front. One punch killed Sam.
That was early in the morning of May the 4th, 2008. The punch had ruptured the main artery to Sam Davis's brain. He was brought to Flinders Medical Centre, where his mother is a nurse. His life ended in the intensive care unit, where most days Nat Cook still works.
I don't know if I could do that. Honestly, if I lost one or both of my children, I just don't know how I'd cope. For them to come out and say their story and give that awareness to everyone, I admire them, definitely.
Admiration and emotion are part of the reason why they make such an impact with this audience. But there's a deeper connection as well, because as violence ended Sam Davis's life, so it has shaped the lives of the young mums.
I've actually been convicted of assault dating back to when I was 15. I've had a lot of violence in my family, like my cousins, and it was just a regular thing, it's sort of all up what I knew. And it hasn't stopped until, say, 6 months ago. I recurrently got on assault charges, ended up being imprisoned and on home detention for nearly 2 years, and I've just sort of come off it all. And it's slowly taking my son has made me realise what I don't want to pass on. But I'm too scared now to even throw a punch, and then listening to that as well is sort of what I needed as well, and to realise how risky it is, and it's just not on, there's no excuse, and I regret 100% everything what I've done. Yeah. Try and change my life around.
Could you have been in that position where you killed somebody?
Yes, and that's so scary. I wouldn't know what I would do. It's a lot down south. It's the same thing.
To know that I want to give my child the complete opposite life. I don't want anything to happen to her, and I don't want her to grow up thinking that it's right to do it to someone else. It's just wrong.
And it's not just the young mums who've been moved and angered by the circumstances of Sam Davis's death.
Sam was a mate that was high on life and lived it to the full. He should always be in our hearts, gone, but never forgotten.
Amongst the 1,700 grieving kids and adults at his funeral was Power ruckman Dean Brogan, who, like Sam Davis, started out playing for South Adelaide.
When you go to something like that, you reflect on your own life and things like that, I guess, and I grew up down the southern suburbs, and the same story what happened to Sam sort of I grew up with, you know, going to parties and fights and things like that. So I could really relate to in a sense, to what actually happened.
He's been an enormous strength to us.
Afterwards, Dean Brogan gave Nat Cook and Neil Davis his phone number, telling them to call if they needed anything. A few months later, they asked him to join the Sammy D Foundation, which they set up to enable them to go out and talk to young people about violence.
Hold on.
In 12 months, Nat and Neil have done more than 20 talks. Dean Brogan says sport is a great way to reach kids, and he obviously adds a star quality to that. But Dean Brogan's own temper has landed him in trouble in the courts and also ensured a measure of public humiliation. But rather than hide that away, he says talking about it is one of the important things he brings to the foundation.
You know, I tell them where I've come from, where I grew up, because a lot of them probably just see me roll out there on a Saturday and play footy and think that, you know, everything's gone perfect and things like that. AFL footballers are perfect people, and they aren't. You know, have had a bit of history with violence, so to speak. So I'm more than happy to tell my story and how I grew up and the violence I was surrounded with growing down the southern suburbs.
But it is by no means just a problem of Adelaide South. It is Australia-wide. The Sammy D message to young people is that a spur-of-the-moment decision can last forever. And that's a hard sell at the very time of life when you think you're invulnerable. What worries Nat Cook and Neil Davis most, though, is that party gate crashing and the violence it can generate has become an entrenched and widespread part of youth culture.
People go to parties just to fight down here. It's horrible.
Oh, that's normal.
Definitely.
Yeah. If you're having a party, you're expected to have randoms drop in, definitely.
Even if you have a list, they still storm through you and will push you aside. Like, yeah, you call cops, but it's all over and done with by the time they've left. It's a regular occurrence. Yeah. It needs to stop.
When you look at you know, the news, they release one or two stories of someone getting hit or some school violence, or it's popping up all the time. So, and the scary thing about it is it's not just fists anymore that people use. There's normally knives involved or some sort of weapons.
Leanne Maddison and Janet Kilpatrick believe stopping it can depend on reaching children as young as possible. The pair run the Sturt Crime Prevention Program, and a few weeks ago they had Nat Cook and Neil Davis talk to the kids at Warradale Primary.
Can someone tell me about some of the key messages that they were talking about?
Janet Kilpatrick was the victim contact officer for the couple, meeting them soon after Sam's death. She recalls very early on they spoke of making something good come out of what had happened. Even so, the officers worried about how it would work.
We weren't sure at first because it was something different for us to do with a group of young people. But it was just amazing watching the reaction of the young people. And when they'd finished their talk, even though they'd only just met them, straight up to them, straight afterwards, and asking questions and, you know, really concerned, but also getting the message, you know, across as well, which is really important. So
they've got an amazing rapport with young people, and obviously that's what they had with Sam, and that comes over quite strongly.
A teenager was charged with manslaughter over the one punch that killed Sam Davis, but he was acquitted after a trial. Like other families in their position, Nat Cook and Neil Davis say their choice is now simple: to be consumed by bitterness and grief, or to help change the world.
What they've done so far is extraordinary. They're knocking down doors, they're getting grants, they're getting people on board, they're running seminars, they're going out to schools. They're well on their way to changing the world, so to speak.
Absolutely. I think they've already done that.
Yeah.
What I would like to see happen is just to change people's way of thinking. You know, if we can stop it happening to one other person, what happened to Sam, well, I reckon we've done our job.